Thanks, everybody. And on behalf of the Forest Coalition, welcome to today's event. My name is Jo O'Hara, and I am the moderator for the day. I'm an independent moderator, so I will just be here trying to make the flow easier and get the questions and the answers out of our panelists that you all want to hear. Bit of background about me is that I am a forester. I'm from the UK and I've worked mostly in Scotland and Ireland. So I do have a bit of interest in the subject myself as well. Just before we get going, a bit of housekeeping. There are no fire alarms due for today. If one does go off, the fire exit is at the back and you follow the green arrows through to the street. I'd also like to let you know that there is a recording taking place today. And clips of it may be used in the future. So if in the Q&A session you need to be aware of this, we have an audience Q&A at the end, and if you speak, it may well be used and it will be recorded. We are also broadcasting this. Okay, so I think that's all the housekeeping that I needed to do before I started. Also, the other small sad news, but has also given us all a bit of an adrenaline rush this morning, is that unfortunately our keynote speaker, Mr. Wallenberg, his plane broke down. So of all of the things to plan for, but of course living through COVID has learnt us all to juggle and to make things up as we go along and to find ways through this, and we have fantastic technology, and thank you very much to the team here who've put everything together. So Mr. Wallenberg will be joining us from his iPad, I think, at the airport to give his keynote and to have a bit of a conversation with me. So huge apologies for that. This was not foreseeable. He has a lot of meetings on today, and we will muddle through as best we can, but I'm sure it will be fine. Technology is fantastic. And then he'll have to leave because he then has to get on the next plane to make it here for the other meetings that he has today. So just a little bit of an apology for that, for when Mr. Wallenberg, he's not here in the flesh. A little bit then, just before we go on to that, and I'm assuming the connection is okay. Yeah. A little bit about the Forest Coalition and just how many countries we have now in the coalition. So we have 6 countries in the coalition. Sorry, I'm looking at my notepad because my memory is not so great. So we have Finland, Austria, France, Germany, Poland, and Sweden. So this is an important coalition that's been going now for nearly 2 years, and this is the second one of these seminars. So that's just so you know a bit about the Forest Coalition, and you will see you have documents on your chairs, which will be referred to today that come from the coalition. Okay, so without further ado, and we have some more people coming into the back, I would like to introduce you to Marcus Wallenberg, the chair of FAM, to give the opening keynote address. Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm terribly sorry that I'm not able to join you. It was really the intention, but some things never seem to work out in the way you plan for. So here we are. Anyway, it's great to be in this morning seminar. I think this is, for at least my point of view, very important that we're talking about the bioeconomy. And it's great to see the friends of European forestry gathered in the room. I can actually see you from where I sit on my iPad. So I am Marcus Wallenberg. I am the chair of the board of a private holding company, FAM, which is part of what we call the family's ecosystem. In short, our ecosystem is consisting of non-profit foundations, which are dedicated to research funding. And in the past 5 years, we have granted about €1 billion to Swedish research, including the forest sector. And part of that inclusion is also the Wallenberg Wood Science Center, where we have for a long time supported researchers to develop new sustainable wood-based materials. Let me go back a little bit to why we're meeting here today, or rather to 1 year ago when we launched our European Forest Coalition. And it was just described. There are organizations, the wood organizations from Germany, France, Poland, Finland, and Austria. We really hope that more countries will join, but we are very, very happy for the group that we have assembled over this time. We did it because we have a common belief that the forest is a strategic resource for Europe, because in the products stemming from the forest fibers lie a lot of the solutions and the challenges we're facing in Europe today: environmental, social, and economic. And now 1 year has passed, and today we organized a seminar for the second time. So I hope that we can refer to this as an annual bioeconomy seminar. We intend to be back next year and the year after that. And our common responsibility, at least the way we see it, is to address challenges linked to climate change. The biodiversity and the competitiveness requires a very long-term commitment. We have to, of course, think about our commitment in decades rather than in years. We want to be part of this solution going forward. And to the extent that we have also learned about how fast policy movements can be in Brussels, we have decided to engage more heavily from our side, more engaged in Brussels. So we will have an establishment in Brussels from here on. And among you is one of our colleagues, Mr. Henrik Vasallo, who will be representing us there. So what has actually happened here since last year? Well, of course, let me start. I mean, this very worrying developments in our neighborhood, the continued brutal Russian attack on a war in Ukraine, and the horrific Hamas attack on Israel, and the subsequent war in the Gaza, with this unacceptable human suffering that we're seeing. This has, of course, deeply shaken us. But it also affects our international trade, increased vulnerability, continuing actually to disrupt already disturbed global value chains that came not the least through the pandemic. And in parallel, we are experiencing a growing global technology race. We have the US Inflation Reduction Act impacting the already fierce global competition surrounding the green industrial transition. All these developments are accentuating Europe's needs to strengthen our resilience and increase our capabilities. In a time when global value chains continue to be challenged, we need to be very careful and nurture and grow our European strategic assets. And one such asset is, of course, the forest, which we are fortunate enough to have on our European soil. It is an asset that we need to attend to and grow in a sustainable way in order to reap the ecological and economic benefits, both from growing trees and from the vibrant forestry and wood industries. Bioeconomy, being a strategic resource, is not new. In many countries, forests and bioeconomies, you see the important part in our past heritage. And this is maybe especially true for the Nordic countries. Swedish forests and mines have created the wealth upon which our modern societies and our welfare states was built. This has created a very special relationship between us Swedes and our forests. We have deep love, and I would even say a constant longing sitting in our offices to get out in the forest for recreation, picking our berries and our mushrooms, and of course, hunt from time to time. But for us, forests also bring wealth and the possibility to earn a living. And this is still the case. The timber, pulp, and paper industry still account for about 10% of Sweden's exports and employs about 120,000 people in our country. And across rural areas in Sweden and in other EU countries, forests are often the most important employer at the heart of the region's economic activities. In many parts of Europe, modern and sustainable forestry is probably one of the best possible regional policies. And actually, which I think we sometimes forget, it's also an important social economic factor in our societies. Another important consideration that should be highlighted since last year's seminar is the conclusion of the Fit for 55 package. I am delighted that these important negotiations to a large extent have been concluded. there is no doubt that we need ambitious EU climate policies. And there is also no doubt that companies who are leading this transition are the ones which probably will be the most competitive. There is, however, one aspect that I believe would receive greater attention from policymakers, namely this aspect of substitution. Because our forests are not only carbon sinks when they are growing, they continue to be important carbon sinks also after they've been harvested in the form of wooden houses, office furniture, etc. And when they at the same time substitute carbon dioxide intensive steel and cement, they are having an even greater beneficial effect on climate change. Together with our partners, we are currently calculating that this kind of substitution would mean more concretely than what it could be. But it's already clear that the forestry-based sector can contribute significantly more to achieve the aims for Fit for 55, if the substitution effect is recognized and prioritized in EU policies going forward. Another important event that has happened since November last year is our joint manifesto. We have elaborated and agreed upon with our European Forest Coalition, and which is also distributed in the room where you sit. This manifesto includes a number of policy recommendations that we believe are important to support the future work of the EU institutions. Now, let me just single out a few of our joint key recommendations. Our first message, is that the European forests are diverse and that one-size-fits-all model does not work. Instead, we need active, sustainable forest management adapted to each specific forest. For example, increasing dead wood can be vital in, for example, Sweden and Finland, where forests need to increase biodiversity. But they can be extremely dangerous in the forests of the southern part of the EU because of the dramatic increased risk of forest fires. We believe in overarching European objectives, but detailed management rules should be shaped by individual countries and forest owners. Our second message is about what I already mentioned, substitution. We need policies that recognize the substitution of fossil-based products. A revision of the EU bioeconomy strategy could be a first step to ensure that future policies enable our bioeconomy to mitigate climate change and generate economic growth. Future EU forest policy should be anchored in all of the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Not only climate and environmental objectives should be considered, but also economic, rural, and social aspects. Our third message is that we need a better dialogue between forest stakeholders and policymakers. Our industry has certainly not done everything right in the past, but today's seminar, our coalition and the manifesto are expressions of our wish to be part of the policy solutions going forward. We hope our continuous engagement and our ambitions to try to find constructive solutions on future policy choices can contribute to building a sustainable European bioeconomy for future generations. So with these words, I would like to conclude my brief introduction, and I look forward and hope that all of you will have an engaging and stimulating discussion. And once again, I regret that I cannot be with you due to this technical mishap. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and I'm glad that the technology has held up for us. And sorry not to be meeting you again in person. I'd just like to put a little follow-up question to you. This is really exciting, this coalition that's being formed. So could you maybe say a bit more about what lessons do you think can come from working across countries transnationally, as it were?
Well, I feel you can put it this way. You have to remember that Sweden, for example, and Finland are two countries with tremendous forest assets. So I think when the discussion about the future of bioeconomy and forests came up in the beginning in Brussels, sometimes we felt a little bit alone. But I think what has really proven is that countries with forest assets have come to the conclusion, which I think our coalition has pointed to, that you need so much attention to local specific situations and environment that it is impossible to view all forest assets in the EU as one single question. You have to be much more local to find the best solutions going forward. And I believe that working together with other countries, and I hope more countries in EU will join, as we have all come to the conclusion that we are sharing very important common goals, which can be solved by joining force and discussing this with policymakers together. So I think that the possibility and the great happening that several other countries felt the same way actually has a possibility for us to engage as an active participation force in the policy questions and the policy work going on forward. And I really want to stress that I think we all realize that there will be regulation coming, but we just want to make sure that it will benefit EU and the whole climate question and the whole environmental question, while at the same time using this asset in a very productive way. But that you can do best by collaborating.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm going to let you maybe escape to go and get onto your aircraft now. We move to the next keynote speaker. So thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you in person next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks very much. And now, in the flesh, I would like to invite up Ms. Maeva Ruetzer, who's the Deputy Director General at DG Grow, to also give a keynote address. Maeva.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be indeed in flesh after all these many video meetings which we have had, well, this number of people in this room, but also with those online. So it's a pleasure to have the occasion to address you on the bioeconomy, and more specifically on the forest-based bioeconomy. I do want to actually stress very much my great appreciation that this time, when we talk about the coalition who has brought this event forward, we really have a coalition of a good number of countries. And by all the feedback we have so far had, it seems that it's going to be even larger, and not only limited to the 4 already very significant partners in the coalition, but perhaps go even beyond that. And I also would like to thank Wallenberg Foundation for keeping the topic up and organizing the event today. The event indeed is timely. On one hand, you might have noticed that Commission President von der Leyen has stressed in her State of the Union speech that Europe is a continent of forests. And I think we really need to take this message by the very deep meaning of it. Also then stressing that forests are irreplaceable source of goods and services. For me, this sentence in her speech is very important, that she took the element of forest and importance of forest really to the forefront of the kind of programmatic speech that we have in the form of the State of the Union. And then, of course, she also announced that Commission will be preparing a biotechnology and biomanufacturing initiative. And as we stand today, we are, as Commission Services, preparing for such a bio initiative, which should then come hopefully early next year, hopefully still under the Belgian presidency. And you would have also noticed that Agrifish Council in April this year has also stressed the importance of bioeconomy as a unique potential, which has a unique potential to strengthen the local communities and give, of course, new impetus to the industrial processes as well. So that is a favorable, I would say, policy atmosphere around bioeconomy in general. Now, if we look a bit back, and I am pretty happy to say that when looking back, I have these very vivid memories since I had the pleasure of working in DG Research at a time when we prepared the very first joint up European level bioeconomy strategy. And we're talking about years 2010, 2011, 2012. Before that, there were also strategies, but they were more, let's say, more maybe research focused. So the strategy which we now have had for more than 10 years has been then an attempt to really bring a more broad approach together from the ecosystem services that bioeconomy, forests, but also other natural ecosystems are offering towards, of course, the industrial use, the medical use, and so on and so forth. So the framework, the policy framework has been trying to be very comprehensive and looking for this balanced approach for using our natural ecosystems and biomass coming from it. Then as years passed, around 2018 or so, we have focused more perhaps on the circularity aspects. So how do you make this resource to go around more, less emphasis on burning it up and more emphasis on actually all resources to be in a recycled, a circular way. And then, of course, came this commission, which, as you well know, has had Green Deal as the leitmotif from the beginning. And with a Green Deal, you would have seen, of course, really an avalanche of legislative proposals which are all aiming at, well, not all, but I mean, majority are aiming at climate and environmental issues. And we have put forward legislation for greenhouse gas emissions, environmental impact moderation or limitations. You would have seen, of course, new proposals to fight deforestation, to elevate biodiversity to a much higher level of policy attention. You would have also seen the new proposal for nature restoration. So why I say it from two angles. I say it from this one angle that when we originally, as Commission, put forward this very comprehensive bioeconomy strategy, it was aiming at doing some of the things that actually are now already tackled by Green Deal. So if we look at what the 2012 bioeconomy strategy aimed at, it was very much about this balance on the use of biomass and how do you build an economy which is really low carbon and using local resources and so on. So when we now think in terms of bioeconomy, we may need to take into account that in the meantime, Green Deal is moving ahead with a lot of legislation, and perhaps some of the elements that originally were part of the bioeconomy concept are now already tackled elsewhere. So one will need to look at it and see what belongs where. So that's one angle of it. But the other angle, of course, is what our industry representatives here would point out, that this revolution, this avalanche of legislation coming from Brussels is making it difficult to grasp, what are all the new things coming, and have we actually yet seen all of it that is hitting the industry. And indeed, some of the legislation is still in trialogues, not yet fully out. Those which are out are still waiting for the implementing acts and standards and so on to be worked on. So I would say there is also a lot of work still ahead to really have a comprehensive and good understanding of what this new legislation will bring. Now, as we're coming to the last year of this commission, it's of course time to also take stock of what has been delivered, where we stand, and what is going to be the way forward and the look forward. On one hand, when we talk about bioeconomy, we can certainly be proud and happy that we do have strength in Europe. We have biotechnology still as technology and as a research field, as one of our assets. We have some industrial sectors which are still competitive and on good standing, be it medical and pharma, or also some industrial applications. And then we have, I would say, challenges or sometimes perhaps unsolved controversies which still persist despite of us having worked on it for years. I would mention that the public acceptance on biotechnology as technology is still not necessarily there. People accept, of course, when we talk about medical biotechnology, much better, but when we think in terms of using it for agriculture, less so. And in thinking of, I don't know, some sort of modified trees, I'm not sure how great the public acceptance would be. We also still have a very important competition between the different uses of biomass, so energy versus using it for materials or food and feed. As Europe, if we would aim at increasing the biomass use, we would of course also need to take into account the other uses that we expect from the natural ecosystems. And as also Mr. Wallenberg has pointed out, our geopolitical situation has changed quite dramatically. The Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the full aggressive war going on there, has of course had impact also on the availability of wood and raw material from these sources. Besides, of course, we still have relatively small uptake on some of these bio-based products in our markets. Many of these products remain niche products with high costs and small quantities. And our support systems still tend to be rather focused on research and not so much on getting things really to the market and to the consumers. Now and then these are kind of lists which we have seen, of course, for the years already, and we haven't necessarily managed to tackle them. On the new side of things, I would also maybe point out some which I hope we will discuss, maybe some of them today, and some certainly will be on our to-do list as we go. I would say the first one is kind of accumulated impact of the geopolitical risks which are playing out and of the very important new legislation that comes. So on one hand, Europe comes with really, I would say, almost as our former EVP Timmermans said, it's basically a revolution. So we are coming with really a very substantive set of new legislation. And this is happening on the background of changing trade relations that Mr. Wallenberg also pointed out, and on the background of our competitors in the US, but also in the China actually stepping up their work on biotechnology as such. You might be aware that about half a year ago, the US president has put forward his executive order on being bold on biotechnology, which is exactly aiming at getting more biotechnology-based products to the market. And on the Chinese side, they are very keen on becoming also a world power on biotechnology. So they are also zooming in, particularly on the research and high research intensity activities on biotechnology. So on this background, we have to see how do we keep our strength and how we build the competitiveness of our industries also, which are using biomass and are using biotechnology. And you would have noticed again from President von der Leyen's speech that really a significant part of her speech is about the competitiveness of our economy, competitiveness of our industries. And I believe today's event might also need to be looked at from this angle. Among the new things that we are tackling also is how do we actually really measure the bio-based products and their life cycle impact? How do we really properly calculate this biogenic carbon? And I hear voices saying that the current methodology is maybe not fully up to date. So we will need to look at these issues, because this could allow us to compare the fossil-based products in a more fair way with the bio-based products. We also should analyze with a fresh eye the policy coherence between various initiatives coming. And let me only mention here biofuels being part of the renewables, but only biofuels in all kinds of forms, be it solid, liquid, gaseous, and then our interest to use biomass also for materials. And then on top of it, of course, our interest to use forests and wood as carbon sinks. So all of it needs to be put together, and the life cycle analysis should be there. And then let me come to this bio initiative, which we are working on, and maybe also highlight a couple of the options for consideration by the people here in the room and by the coalition. If I look at what our president has already suggested or what she is aiming at in her speech, and also what we are now working on, I would say the 2024 bio initiative very likely needs to be looking at, again, biotechnology as a technology. So what would it take to keep the lead in our research and innovation capacity? And there it's very important that our DG Research keeps up the work that they have been already carrying out on funding, for example, the bio-based joint undertaking. You know that we have a really substantial amount of money channeled through the circular European bioeconomy joint undertaking. We're talking about really billions going through this. It's important that this focus is not lost and is kept, rather, for the end of Horizon Europe, and then when we prepare for the next framework program, to have bio-based industries, also forest-based industries, as part of what DG Research and the Commission in general keeps as a focus. But that's not all. Beyond that, I would say we certainly need the industrial competitiveness to be there and the market uptake to be much more in the center than it perhaps has been so far. And this is where DG Grow is currently working with a large group of stakeholders. And I would very much hope that if you're not yet part of our seminars, that you would sign up for that. I have also a couple of colleagues here with me. If you wish, you can also contact me if you haven't received the invitation by some reason. We are having a session of seminars since March until the end of this year. We are looking into questions such as standardization, certification schemes, maybe consumer awareness, public procurement. So what it would really take to get more of the products to the market. And then a third element, which I think will make it to this initiative, and we will need to see finally what it is going to be. But I think the third element is around this recognition that biotechnology also has indeed this resilience value. And the resilience perhaps from two angles: using biomass from here, so things that we have, also the circularity aspects there. And the other element is the recognition that we need to be more cautious with our technology transfer. And again, you would have perhaps noticed that when we talk about European economic security strategy, biotechnology has been mentioned as one of the areas where we need to be cautious with our technology transfers and investments in countries which are not necessarily all our friends. So coming back to DG Grow role, where I work in the European Commission, I wanted to mention to you that we have some formats of how do we work with the industry. We currently already have forest-based industries expert group. This is a group that has met already for a number of years, and we continue inviting experts from member states, from industries to work with us. So this is kind of a stable format, allowing to table issues and questions with us, and then also, of course, to discuss them in the expert circle. Then we have this series of workshops, which are kind of one-off, specifically for the bio initiative, which comes next year, and we invite you to be part of it. But then furthermore, there are other formats which you might know or you might not know, so let me mention them. With some of the industrial sectors, we have worked through a format which is called transition pathways. And the transition pathway is a way that allows the industrial sector. Let me say we have, for example, textiles transition pathway, which textiles industry worked on together with us. This allows to bring Commission services around the table and to look what it takes exactly on the policy side. So what is there? How things fit together, what is missing, what needs to be still tackled. And then it also looks at investments, it looks at skills, it looks at digitization of this industry, it looks at how to reduce carbon footprint. So the transition pathway can be maybe a format to consider if you think this might be useful. And then I would say it possibly needs to be a bit more narrow. It cannot be bioeconomy as such, because then we would be talking about basically the whole economy. It maybe needs to be zooming in a bit more concretely, either on certain sectors or forest-based. Then we have a format which is called the KICS, EIT KICS. What are they? They are the European Institute of Technology, Knowledge and Innovation Communities. If you're not yet aware of it, take a look, because these KICs are a way how the Commission, through our DG EAC, actually, not DG Grow, but our DG EAC, so Education and Culture DG, is funding quite substantially the knowledge build-up, the startups, the innovation in the industries. And we have these knowledge communities created and funded for manufacturing, food, health, climate. But so far, there is nothing for forest-based industries. And the funding is still available, I understand, for the years to come. And why is it also important? It's also important because I have heard that at least some of you are considering coming forward with Industrial Alliance proposal. And Industrial Alliance is indeed, again, a third format how Commission works with industries. Industrial Alliance is something that is for mature but still innovative industries to come together. We have these industrial alliances, for example, for hydrogen value chain, building a value chain. We have industrial alliance for batteries. And the important point why I want to link it to these EIT KICs is that the EIT KICs are often the way how Commission can also animate these alliances, because from us, from DG Grow, we don't provide any funding into the alliances. Alliances are basically groups of businesses and then moderated by their own secretariat. The alliances need to bring value added, and they normally are there to build new value chains. So that's something that you might consider. And then indeed, finally, what I would say, with all these options available, it's important that the industry stakeholders and member states discuss the options and come with a united voice towards Commission. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Maiva. And actually, my husband's a director at Climate Kick, so I can, yeah, definitely. And I know they are doing work in forest bioeconomy. So if anybody wants to speak to me, I can make that connection. Okay, thanks. Just a little follow-up, and then we are pressed for time. But you mentioned these industrial alliances right at the end. What the people here who are in this coalition, what do you think are the key lessons that they could learn from other industrial alliances?
Key lessons. Let me look at the title of the session, Building the Bioeconomy Together. I would say together means that, yes, 6 countries is good. 27 would be better. Bioeconomy, let's try and zoom into something that is manageable. Let's try and find, kind of a meaningful list of industries that by working together can build value chains. Forest-based and textiles may be a good match. Forest-based construction, possibly a good match. So talking about industrial alliance, it has to be from the value chain perspective. And then the word building. Building means that we have to have a plan and we need to know what we are building. So as long as we talk in very general terms, we are all happy and say, yes, of course, we all love forests, but we need to know what we are building. So when you come to the Commission with a proposal for alliance, it's good to have it all kind of, agreed and sorted out before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thanks, loads in those keynote speeches at the start, and I forgot to say that we do have Q&A at the end, but basically we're going to run through the keynotes, both panels, and then we have the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please note them down as we go through, and most of the panelists will still be here. Okay, speaking of panelists, I would now like to invite up my guests from panel one. And these are going to be Torbjörn Hack, who's the Swedish Coreper ambassador, who is here. Hello. Ms. Paula Leitomäki, who's the Director General of the Finnish Forest Industries Federation, and Pierre-Olivier Drège, who's the President of the French Forestry Cooperatives Organisation. Please take your seats, panel one.
I don't know.
Sorry, I don't bite. You can sit next to me. Great. Okay, thanks all. So in this first this panel, we're going to be, we've heard a lot in the introduction about the circular bioeconomy, which tends to focus on the use, reuse, recycle part of the cycle, but maybe a little less about the grow. So in this first panel, we're going to get back to the woods a little bit and talk about the growing. So what I'm going to put a question to all three of you, and then you can answer it in whichever order you want, is we hear a lot about the use, reuse, recycle, but less about grow and regenerate. So from your perspective, what are the most important messages about forest management that those involved in promoting a circular and regenerative economy should be championing? Who would like to go first? Pierre?
Me first? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, as a forest cooperative in France, we happen to offer services to our members who are landowners, small, medium-sized, large ones, in order to enable them to manage the forest in a sustainable way. That's obvious. I mean, everybody wants to do that. But in fact, there are two major ways to do it. And behind that, there are two visions of the future of our European forest. The first one we are trying to promote is to have an active, sustainable management of those private forests in order to get a good, at the same time, a good environment, biodiversity, and also a production of renewable material, which is wood, in order to substitute to fossil originated material. For building, timber, also for building and furniture, pulp for packaging, and particle panels, and also energy. And the other approach would be totally different. This idea of having a large part of the European forest in free evolution. Free evolution means that man doesn't do anything in the forest. And this idea that, in fact, it would be really better if man didn't enter the forest to do something. Some NGOs promote this idea, and I must say this idea is also discussed sometimes here in Brussels. We don't think that this second approach is adequate. And not only is it adequate, but we think it might be dangerous, because here comes the climate change. The climate change is a threat. It's a very serious threat for forest. But as always with a threat, it can become an opportunity. And what is this opportunity? In fact, we see it in France, we see it in Europe, that in some regions, well, many regions already, the climate change is so rapid today that the searchers tell us that the forest won't be able to adapt itself to deal with this very rapid evolution of the climate. And therefore, there is a need to act to help the forest to be more resilient in the future. And for instance, in my region, which is Normandy in France, we have this beautiful forest of beech. And we know because it's drying now, because of hot summers, because no rain in summer, that by the end of the century, there won't be any more large beech forests in our region. And what we're trying to do is help forest owner to change the species, for instance, towards oak, because oak is more resilient. Local oak coming from the southern part of France or Europe, in order to keep the coverage of forests in the present area. So active management it appears to us the only way to have both a resilient forest for the future and provide renewable material to substitute to fossil. So this is what we're trying to do, and this is what we are doing in order to promote the bioeconomy in our country, in Europe in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paula?
Well, the most important messages are growth, sustainable management, and focus on organic carbon cycles. Growth, I mean growth of forests and growth of European biomass feedstocks. If we are to become the first continent, carbon neutral continent, we need to be able to substitute the fossil materials by renewable materials. And in order to do that, we need to take care, of course, that the biomass feedstock is bigger and growing faster than what we use every year. And if we look at the European forests, it is growing. I mean, the annual increment is bigger than the utilization. According to the European Forest Report, the forest area in Europe has been growing during the last 30 years. The volume of wood in Europe has been growing remarkably during the last 20 years. Supply of wood has been growing, and also the area designated to conservation purposes has been growing. So this can be done. But it's very important that we focus on sustainable growth. And that does not happen without active management measures. So it requires sustainable management of forest, because we can boost the growth. And the more the growth, the bigger also the sink. So also for climate purposes, growing forests are much stronger sink than the old forests or not growing forests are. And then, as was mentioned here already in the opening speeches, it is very difficult to substitute all the fossil materials that we are currently using with biomass, because we are using fossil materials a lot in our material and chemical value chains. And therefore, the next step is to focus on taking the carbon that we need so much from the atmosphere, and that means using carbon dioxide as a raw material. And when we are using biogenic carbon dioxide, then you double the positive effort, because the raw material in itself is already renewable, and regenerated forest is again sequestering carbon dioxide. And then when you, with this carbon dioxide, replace again fossil materials, then you kind of double the positive impacts. So I think that these are the most important elements. And last but not least, the direct comment to Deputy Director General, you were talking about, could the forest-based value chain be compatible with textiles? And yes, they could, because textiles are already forest-based. Forest-based fibers are already used in producing textiles. This is actually one of the most promising growth area of the industries in the future. So definitely forest-based value chain can be involved in many in the areas that we currently are using either fossil or otherwise very nature resources consuming ways of production.
Thanks, Paula. And hearing you speak there reminds me of one of the pieces of work that Climate Kick has done with partners is the 3S framework with the substitute, sequester and store. So there's this work on, you get a triple hit from trees and wood in terms of biogenic carbon.
As long as we use that much for fossil organic carbon, I would not prefer storage.
Okay.
We should use it. Instead of using fossil from the ground, we should use the carbon from the air.
I think the idea is use it like this. This is a store. I don't know if anybody's noticed, and I can't help it sitting here. If you look up, we have these fabulous glue laminated wood beams in here. This is replacing steel. This is exactly what we're talking about, but that is also storing carbon in this building. So I was waiting for my moment to say that because I've been sitting looking at them, but they're a fantastic example of that. Thank you. And last but not least, Björn.
Not much to add, actually. The point in this debate about substitution, I think what we've seen developing over the past years is a much broader perspective on the use of forest products, the way they can be used, and the way the technologies are developed for using them, the different areas in which they are used, this being, and to the extent they are being used, like the example that you're pointing to. So I think this substitution debate is ongoing, but it is perhaps also a reflection on the debate on forests and forestry as such, in the sense that I feel we have a few hurdles to get to and to overcome in this debate, and I think some of them were reflected here earlier. One is being sort of to combine this argument that we need to be very local in the sense what we do, the standards we apply, we need flexibility. Yes, but on the other hand, you would also need to argue and make credible that actually locally something is also happening in the sense of achieving the sustainability requirements, but also producing sort of a sustainable industry. So I still feel in this debate, we're still in the beginning of this debate, and we had over the past years have had some issues on which we might differ in policy approach. I also sense that, drawing from what I heard this morning, it would be helpful to think a bit, but what do we ask from the European level? What do we want to do at European level? Building the bioeconomy together. Yes, but in which sense? Are we focusing on regulation, legislation, to which extent and where and how? Are we looking at research? Yes, we are. Are we looking at building industries, industrial alliances? Are we building industrial policies? What do we mean by that? I hear a lot of words, concepts floating, but I sometimes ask myself, what about the definitions of those concepts? Where are we actually heading? And in that sense, perhaps this debate is also reflecting a broader debate on what the EU should and should not do in terms of industrial policy.
Great, thank you. Right, so I'm going to follow up on a few of those points now. So Pierre, you mentioned this resilience, and you were saying that the many threats that we're seeing across European forests, be it windstorms and fires in the Mediterranean to insect pest outbreaks right the way across. So how can we ensure that forest management supports the resilience of European forests?
Well, in fact, it's not so difficult with some of the forest owners because they are involved in the questioning what you're asking. So they want to do something about it, and the only point is to show them how to do it, and to introduce innovation, what the researchers have been producing in the latest year, and to go forward. Where it becomes more difficult is with the small land forest owners, the ones who have 1, 2, 5, 10 hectares, because they are not involved in the same way, and they represent quite an important part of the private only owned forest at least in my country, but also in many countries in Europe. And we're trying to get in touch with them, and because the risk is not to do anything to deal with the problem, especially the climate change issue. And if you don't do anything, at the end of the day, what will happen is that the forest will be cropped, but not by them, by fire, by storms, or bark beetles, or diseases. And it will be lost for everybody. There will be no forest anymore on the land, and the material will be lost for the bioeconomy. So what we're trying to do is not only to work with those forest owners who have a management plan and help them to enforce this management plan, but also with the others, and get them together as a sort of small local communities in order to do something together and lower the prices, so they can use a forest, they can invest, they can make plantation and monitor those plantation, and not by themselves all alone, but together, and we're trying to help them for that.
Great, thank you very much. And Paula, this we heard from Torbjörn at the beginning of this, what we're trying to do here, and that there are still hurdles to overcome. So, what more should the forestry sector be doing to promote its green credentials?
I think that issue is directly linked actually to this resilience element that you took up. Namely, I think that one of the most important things is that we need to recognize that we have this double problem ahead of us at the moment, and that means climate change and loss of biodiversity. And the challenge for us is, and the task for us is, that we need to be able to tackle these two elements simultaneously. We have just conducted a broad survey in Finland on biodiversity of our forests. Now, we need to remember that these are northern boreal forests, so they are already very different from southern France forests. But we can see that due to the changes in forest management, many of the key elements of biodiversity that are called like structural features, which are important for biodiversity, have been strengthening during the last decades. And the key elements are in northern boreal forest, it's a amount and quality of dead wood, it is mixed species, mixed forests, different kind of tree species, and it is the significantly valuable habitats. And many of these elements have been strengthening. And then we also created, together with the Natural Resource Institute and University of Eastern Finland, we also created some scenarios that how do these changes that the different certificates require today and the changes in legislation require today, how do these changes in forest management, how do they affect the biodiversity elements? And the scenarios also show a positive trend. So it can be done. And this is question about economically utilized forests, not conservation areas. It can be done, but it requires focus on daily forest management measures, focus of owners, focus of the whole value chain. So the key issue is, of course, that everybody in the value chain, we do our very best in our everyday work. We stick to the facts and also focus on learning more and more about the facts. And then, of course, we need to do constant changes in order to take care of the climate issue and biodiversity simultaneously. But the thing is that usually when you improve the biodiversity, you also strengthen the resilience. So, for example, mixed forests are more resilient. In boreal forest, if you have lots of dead wood, it is more resilient because most of the natural enemies of different pests, like this back beetle, are living in the dead wood. So if you remove all the dead wood, you open the door for these destroyers. So in that sense, resilience and biodiversity go in hand. It can be done in economically utilized forests, but it requires our effort and our measures, and that's everyday work in the whole value chain.
Great, thank you very much. And finally, Torbjörn, I'm sorry, we're really pushed against time because everybody's got so much to say, which is excellent. So you led the Fit for 55 files during Swedish presidency, yes, which Mr. Wallenberg observed earlier, there might not have been so much focus on substitution of fossil fuel products in the negotiations. So what's your view on how the forest's different roles were reflected?
I think that any negotiation will be conducted on the basis of the proposal that you're working on. And in this case, we were working on text essentially containing proposals on sustainability and forest management issues. So naturally, that's where the focus was. I think looking back at this negotiation, it was an interesting development there, because I sensed that at the outset of this debate, there was a clear focus perhaps on what we may frame as sustainability issues. True, but I also sensed that the perspectives were changing a bit as we went on. And in general terms, I think there was a much broader understanding for the different aspects of forest policies at the end of that negotiation process than at the beginning. And that was a considerable change. What that depends on, well, for this forum, it perhaps was the activities of the industry or other players, yes, but we also had a very strong reality check with following the pandemic, following the crisis in Ukraine, which made very clear that we had to have a fresh look at our energy sources, and that was a clear signal coming from virtually all member states, and that changed a bit the perspectives, I would say, at the end of that negotiation. Having said that, what is important in this debate, I think, when looking at regulations and regulatory approaches, what you do, the need for flexibility at member states level, it's obvious. I mean, I grew up in the forest, in the boreal forest, and I know how easy it is to get lost in it, and it is also very easy to get lost in this debate. But there are very, very different conditions with which we are working. And looking at in the Nordic area, we also have developments in the way we nurture our forests these days, and there are rapid changes going on. But there is this challenge, I think, for the industry to explain that by flexibility, you do not mean exemptions in the sense that nothing is possible. And that is a very tough debate to take on. But I think you're very right there, Paula, that you need to work on these issues on a daily basis and explain, and recognize also what is not going in the wrong direction, in the right direction, simply. So there is a need for some honesty in the good sense of the word from all players in this debate, actually, to face the reality and to recognize that there are no sort of quick fixes to this situation. across the board, which is, of course, a very big challenge in regulatory terms at European level. You know, you want to go in and fix something, but you know, you need to use your brain a bit to get there. And I think we still have some challenges in that debate to come.
Thank you very much. So kind of warning there. I have to say, ever since I went into forestry 35, maybe plus years ago, the most common thing is, why can't foresters just communicate better about what they're doing? And I think we still seem to have that challenge of getting lost in the woods and not taking people with us. So, yeah, more work to do. Use our brains, definitely. Thank you very much. So I'd like now for us to thank our panel in the usual way. So while we're just doing a quick technical change and wiring up the other team as they come on, just wanted to sort of just reflect on a few of the key points that I was picking up from that. Yeah, and I'm steeped in this stuff, and immediately we think we're on quite a focused conversation, and it goes like this. So I absolutely get the points that Torbjörn was made at the end. So I think some of the things, one of the two key words I think that have been said the most are, we're going to need a plan. We've got a manifesto. There's a coalition building. Coalition needs to get bigger, but we need to move from kind of general statements into a more focused plan. We were hearing that from a number of different speakers. So that seems to be a very key point to take away from the discussions so far. And I think the 3 points that Maiva, that you said at the end, which was more countries, focus on your product, get that really defined well, and get a plan together. I think that really kind of summed things up really nicely. The other word that has come across a lot is resilience. And this word is just cropping up everywhere at the moment. And this link between what makes a resilient forest going into the future, what makes a resilient forest now, and the link between management and resilience. I think there's a whole, it's easy to say, is management equals more resilience. I think much harder to actually deliver and to prove it, and particularly to do it in the different circumstances that we find across Europe, from the plantation ley land to the small farmer-owned forests in Ireland, even up to Iceland, and all countries in between. So I think there does seem to be this link between management and resilience, but I think there's more work to be done on that. So that's all. They're kind of some of the themes that are coming out for me now. Just doing a quick recap for you. But I think, Gary, you're now all wired up. We have everybody here. So I'd like to welcome up our second panel onto the stage. If you want to come up, and then I'll introduce you from the stage. So we have Gary Healy who's director from Quilcher, which is a state forest body in Ireland. MEP Anne Sandé, who is a French MEP. Welcome, Anne. Franz Württemberger, who's a co-rapporteur from Austria. Dieter Lechner, also from Austria, who's the Deputy Managing Director of Holz Industry Austria. And we do have, and that's everybody here. So we have four. We have a slightly bigger panel this time. So, welcome. Great. So we've been discussing the forests a bit in panel one, and now I want to move us to the kind of the use, reuse, recycle part of the economy. So for a question for all of you is, why is the substitution effect of wood so important, and what needs to change to increase its recognition? And Anne, I realise that you're in a rush, so I will maybe come to you first on that question.
Okay. Thank you for letting me speaking the first. I have also to present you my excuse, because I will have to leave very quickly, because at the Parliament we have important discussion this week, because we are preparing the vote for next week on pesticides, and so many packaging, and these are all my dossiers. So I didn't want to delay today, but really I have to leave. So I begin. Thanks a lot. I will read, because my English is not so well, but I'm very happy to have this discussion with you this morning. Also important issue of course, forests are a real wealth for Europe because wood represents economic and environmental opportunity for rural areas. It's very important. And since the beginning of our mandate, we have begun a real environmental transition with the Green Deal. And in this transition, we are looking for solutions to build the economy of tomorrow, a decarbonized economy. In this, wood has infinite solutions in terms of energy, construction, and of course, carbon storage. And all these solutions are now on the table, and we have to grasp them. At the European level, of course, we still have a lot of work to promote and to encourage the use of wood. We have also to say that we have sometimes met with oppositions to wood energy, especially in the Renewable Energy Directive, but we cannot deprive ourselves of wood to meet our objectives. I'm also elected in the regional council of the region Grand Est in France, and this region is rich in its forests. We have been very committed to bioeconomy since 2018 in the region because we have adopted a bioeconomy strategy. And among the priorities of the Grand Est region in its bioeconomy strategy, we have a key tool that can be used, for example, is the development of timber construction. And this is quite assimilated at the European level through the Bauhaus initiative, which aims to put the Green Deal in our daily lives and which concretely supports and finances sustainable urban development projects or sustainable buildings. I found that the European Commission today has sometimes a vision globally that is not sufficiently focused on the economic life on agriculture world. On the contrary, the environmental prism takes an increasingly important place that sometimes leaves the agricultural and the forestry sectors as a provider of solution at the end of the past. And yet the bioeconomy is the meeting between the economy and the valorization of life. And I think both are very important, and we should really have this well-balanced position, which is not always the case. So the Green Deal was, of course, meant to mark an environmental transition, but also to take our economy with it. And today, some initiatives completely miss this double objective. This has consequences not only on our long-term goals, but also on rural economic jobs. And it is also a matter of strategy autonomy. The European Union has significant forest resources, and that needs really to be used.
Thank you very much, Anne. Yes, plenty in that to pick up later on. So, Gary, I'll maybe come to you next by way of contrast from the Irish perspective.
In terms of substitution, I mean, I think as you mentioned at the outset, Joe, it is around sink, store, and substitute. So substitution is vital, I think, because if you look at the numbers in terms of fossil fuel usage in all housing and construction, 38% of all our emissions come from housing and construction, 14% in the construction element itself. So I think it's really important that if we're going to reach our climate agenda targets in Europe, we have to address the use of fossil fuel. So we have to defossilize, not just decarbonize. I think somebody said to me last week at an event with our members of parliament that the only construction material that comes from above ground is actually timber. Everything else comes from below ground. So we have to address those issues. We have to address the excavation. We have to address the quarrying. And one of the concerns I have is that our debate in Europe seems to be heading towards why are we felling trees? Not about why we're not addressing quarries, why we're not addressing fossil fuels and concrete and so on. And I think that's a big debate in Ireland as well. And I think we need to bring that debate over to Europe more, because I don't think we will achieve our climate targets if we don't. One fact and one number that we came across in Ireland is we will displace 0.77 tons of carbon with 1 cubic meter of timber. And I think that's very powerful if we can go that to all the policymakers here in Europe, that every time that we are doing something in timber, it isn't just around the substitute, it's also the embodied carbon that's actually in that product. And I think that's a powerful message to get across as well.
Great, thanks very much, Gary. And I know you've been doing a lot of this in Ireland over the last year or so and getting this debate to the table. Great. So Frans, coming to you next. What's your take on this substitution effect of wood?
Well, thank you very much, Joe, also for inviting Austria to bring the Central European perspective in this debate as well. And it's really good to exchange with members of parliament and with stakeholders and experts. We're all in this together. Just because I thought at the beginning it was very interesting what Mr. Wallenberg said, and he very rightly did so, because we just got it confirmed in the first panel. It's forest is different everywhere. And my colleague from the Swedish Perm Rep just triggered me before when he said that you might easily get lost in the woods. Just to explain a little bit, because I find this extremely helpful, especially here in Brussels, to understand each other, to understand other member states as well, is that you look through their eye actually at the positions. So we could not get lost actually in Austrian woods, at least in some woods. I remember when I was a child, a friend of mine who was from the western part of Austria, where we have a lot of woods also in mountainous areas, and she never got the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, because she said, how can you get lost in the wood? You just walk downhill. So that was really, I think that's also very important to keep that perspective. Also then as a message to the Commission, forest is not the same everywhere. We need to respect that. So from that point of view, Austria has 48% of its territory covered by woods. So that's extremely important also to take into account. Woods is not just a museum for us. It's really important. It's forest management. It's something that we've been working on for centuries. The woods also have, especially in the western, more mountainous area of Austria, they have a very important function, which is to prevent from avalanches, which is not the case if it's flat somewhere. But so this is also important, and we get into the whole debate, which was just mentioned before, mixed woods, woods that have roots which go deep down in order to prevent from avalanches, but also to, in certain areas, from wind. So it really depends on every single valley, even, for example, in the region I know best, in Tyrol, where it really, the wind can be different from one region to from one valley to the other, and then have an impact also on forest and forest management, of course. Having said that, on your question, I think it's the substitution effect. Why is it so important? Because it's there. It was mentioned just now by our Irish colleague. We have set ourselves some very ambitious climate goals, neutrality by 2050 in Europe, by 2040 in Austria even. So in order to get that, we need to make the best. We need to use the best resources that we have, and wood and forestry is one of them. We can go into numbers. If you look, for example, in the Austrian woods, the calculations we have is that every second 1 cubic meter of wood grows in Austria. So within 40 seconds, you can actually have an average detached house, which is being growing in the woods. So that's quite impressive if you think in those terms. So I'm totally with you, Joe. It's good to see woods here on the ceiling, and it has been mentioned before. Also there, the European Bauhaus is something which we find is very important. Also, of course, it creates jobs. Mr. Wallenberg has said it at the beginning. If you go into the three pillars actually of sustainability, you have everything there in the wood industry. Which so it's also it's the economics, it's the environment or ecologic, and also the social component. So it's a lot of jobs which are behind. We have done some studies together with our experts back home, and it's quite impressive. I mean, you have, for example, overall in Europe, according to this study, you have 17.5 million people working in that industry. So that's, I don't want to compare to member states, but it's the size of the Netherlands, more or less, in terms of population. So that's quite impressive. Or the overall gross added value that you have by the forestry and the wood industry in Europe is the equivalent of the GDP of Spain in 1 year, 2019, for example. So 1.1 trillion euros, quite impressive. And it's also the equivalent of 7% of the total EU economic force. So yes, the potential is there. Let's make best use of it.
Great, thank you very much. Last but not least, Dieter, substitution effect.
Thank you very much for having me on the panel. A lot of what I wanted to say is already said, but I want to add on with other issues. What is really the substitution effect? This is a discussion that we always face. Substitution is if you, so to say, substitute a material with the same quality by a material that emits less. And if we look, for instance, into construction, we have always the discussion we have to decarbonize and reduce the emissions from the construction sector. And wood can substitute other materials that are more fossil-based. And we have a lot of timber engineering and construction concepts that could really decarbonize the construction sector. As such, it would allow, on the one hand side, so to say, the carbon storage in the construction for a long time, and on the other hand side, we could reduce the emissions during the use of the construction also. I think that timber can replace other materials, and it can store CO2 for a long time, at least for the time that trees regrow, etc., etc. And this is confessed in several studies. Just recently, there was a publication of the United Nations program together with architects and the Department of Architects and Ecosystems in the US, which clearly confessed that the use of wood in construction could, on the one hand side, benefit the sustainable use of or the sustainable management of forests by adding value to byproducts, and also by having an impact on forest fires. If you don't do anything, you possibly have some forest fires. And on the other hand side, it could also speed up the storage and the sequestration in forests as well as in urban areas by 70%. And there are further studies that, for instance, a specific product like CLT, which was investigated for a long time, it could, the use of mass timber in a broader sense could decrease the CO2 emissions in construction by 14 to 31% and the fossil fuels by 12 to 15%. And even operational emissions could be decreased by timber building versus other building materials by 10%. So there is a lot of proof. And if you ask what could be done and where are we, I think it is well recognized that the substitution effect is something very, very positive, and it is recognized. And we have also heard from Commission that it has recognized. But if you ask what can be done to speed up, I think we all recognize it now. But what we miss is we need clear indications what to do when and who is doing what in order to really speed up the substitution effect in the construction sector. And this is also addressed to the Commission. It is nice that we know that we have a substitution effect, but where are the concrete, sorry for using this word, where are the specific actions that Commission envisages to speed up this substitution in the buildings? We have a lot of studies, we have a lot of discussions now coming up. Unfortunately, what we can take off the discussions in the past is we all know we have to have carbon sequestration and substitution, but the only discussion we have to inspire architects and planners to use more wood. This is one of the outcomes of the Bauhaus. And the Commission has also stated that wood is a good material to turn construction, the cities from a carbon emitting to a carbon storage. This is also what the Commission has confessed. And it has also stated that there's a lot of potential to use wood, because at the moment we use 3% of wood in construction. It was stated by the Commission. But the next question is, what do the Commission really envisage to speed up the process that we use more wood in construction? And this is my plea to the Commission. We are, as Mr. Wallenberg said, ready to sit together and also to elaborate on concrete actions. And we would be ready also to discuss with you what concretely can be done to speed up more use in construction. The only thing that we can take away at the moment is that architects and planners who are inspired to want to use wood ask us, do we have enough wood to be used. Yeah, and this is really, so to say, a perversion of the discussion that we had in the beginning. We have to speed up. We know that it is a solution, but now we ask, do we have the material? Can we go for wood? And I can give you a concrete example. It's really a concrete example. We have had a few buildings in Vienna that were supposed to be designed in wood. There was even the plan designed in wood. And what has happened? They have been converted into concrete. So we exactly oppose the initiative by if we are not sensible in the communication, and secondly, do not back up all these papers that we have on the table by concrete actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I want to add also one issue. No, I want to add one point that I forgot. I was inspired. It was mentioned several times by the deputy director of DG Grow that Mrs. von der Leyen said Europe is a continent of forests. Hopefully, it is not only a continent of forests, but also forest products. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Anne, I think we only have you for a brief moment. So I'm going to come the question to you first. So you obviously had a key role in the nature restoration law negotiations, and we discussed that at last year's seminar. How do you think the law will enhance forests and woods green credentials? And is there a risk that all the discussion about forest restoration has an unintended consequence of undermining the role of wood as a green material?
Yes, this is a difficult dossier, the nature restoration law, and I am a rapporteur on the opinion in the agriculture committee. And I have to say that this subject is quite symbolic to describe the ideologic opposition we can have, especially in the European Parliament, but also with the European Commission on some environmental issues. And this legislation as a whole advocated the belling of part of our agriculture, but also of our forest, of all the forest. And we managed in the discussion to improve the text. We had the last trilogue last week. And in the final text, we improve the text and we change the obligation of result has been changed in obligation of means, in particular in the agriculture ecosystem. But I have to say that on the forestry ecosystem, these have been more complex. At the beginning, the Commission provided indicators disconnected, I think, and you said it also to us, disconnecting from the reality, in particular with laying and standing dead wood. These indicators are still in the final text. Also, state will be able to choose from an overall indicator list. The forestry sector, and in particular the cooperative, had warned us at the length of the risk of these indicators, especially concerning the fires in the forest, but also the safety of workers. But we have not been heard, I have to say this, and in the text still has many key issues that will have to be seriously discussed before the plenary. A new Article 10A will also be introduced into this regulation with the objective of planting 3 billion trees by 2030. And this could be positive for forest economy, but we have to be very careful on the application of this objective. These 3 billion of trees must not be taken as a sanctuary where human activities are forbidden. So we have really it's always the same question, to find this well-balanced position between the environmental issues and the economic issues. And it's not so easy. And I have to say, in the beginning of the mandate of the parliament, for example, the balance was always in the sense of just environmental issues. We saw it with different regulation, but now I think, yes, members of the parliament, maybe at the commission also, things are changing, and maybe we will have some more balanced decision. Let's see in the next weeks. Personally, I believe that forest will be richer and healthier if managed, and forest, we don't have to forget this, are really multifunctional, and they have this different role, environmental, social, and economic, and there is a complementarity between all these issues. This is what I will defend with my group, the EPP, in the parliament.
Great, thank you very much, and more power to you. Okay, great, thanks. And are you able to stay with us, or are you?
If you authorize me, I will leave, because these issues on forest and good balance position, we have also to defend them on agriculture, and we have, as I said, many texts that will be voted, main text next week, and we have the discussion now. So
okay,
I will leave.
I'll let you go.
Thank you, and I keep at your disposal. We had many meetings during all the processes of the restoration law, and of course we will continue to discuss together.
Great.
Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Thank you very much for coming.
I'm sorry.
Au revoir.
Thanks. Right, Gary, I'm going to come to you now. And there's obviously we've already heard about the construction sector. So coming to you, the need for new housing in Ireland is huge. You've got huge population growth, huge issues with housing, and it's obviously very politically contentious. So could you tell us about the opportunities for wood in construction, maybe building a bit and not repeating, in Ireland, and what are the key barriers to overcome? And if we can keep our answers now to a couple of minutes, that'd be grand. Yeah.
I'll be brief, Joe. Thank you. I just want to make one comment on nature restoration, if I could.
Yeah.
I mean, it's referred by Anne around the 3 billion trees, but one of the amendments there was like planting 3 billion trees not for harvesting. So I think one of the issues we have is that we need to ensure we have trees for harvesting and trees for amenity and trees for other uses. And it's actually core to the challenge we have, ensuring that we have timber supplies, because if we do have any provisions there which talk about trees that are not for harvesting, it does go back to Dietrich's point around not having trees there, or not having timber there in terms of supply going forward. Mm-hmm. Just to come back to I think it's a useful case study in Ireland around substitution, because we, like all European countries, we have a housing crisis. We need to build 300,000 homes. We don't in Ireland have a legacy of building with wood. So we would have about 20% of our homes are timber built. In a lot of countries in Europe, that's an awful lot better. But compared to, say, somewhere like Scotland, where it's actually 80%, 70, 80%. So we have a big challenge in Ireland to change the mindset of architects, of the construction industry, to get them to use wood products more. And we have CLT, and we have a number of demonstrator homes so we can do that. But one of the things that we are trying to communicate across to the construction industry and to us, the politicians, is that very point we're making around substitution, that this has to happen for climate change, and we have to ensure there is a timber supply. But there's also an issue in terms of building homes where it is actually quicker with wood. Yeah. There's actually less waste with wood. You can have it prefabricated. So from a construction point of view, an architect's point of view, it's a very good product to work with. And we have now had 2 conferences in Ireland where we have engaged with all the architects and the industry. We have worked very closely with our Green Party minister, who's been very supportive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the lessons that we have learned, is that sometimes you assume people know a lot about your industry, but they don't. They don't necessarily understand the points that you're making. So substitution was something which the Green Party didn't fully understand before coming into government. We spent a lot of time with the Green Party and their ministers and the wider government talking about issues like waste, talking about the benefits of using wood products. And that has worked very well for us because the minister has been very supportive. We now have a working party set up by the minister, which has got the construction industry and the forest industry and the sawmills together in the same room. We hope over the next couple of months to change regulations. We have a regulation in Ireland, for example, where we cannot build above 10 metres. So we have no timber buildings above one floor in Ireland. We need that. We need those changes to happen. But we have made a lot of progress, and I think obviously in terms of the coalition here today and the alliance today, talking and engaging with people who you may not think agree with your point of view is actually worthwhile, and we're finding that in Ireland. And hopefully we'll see a lot more timber frame buildings in the next couple of years coming across in Ireland.
Yeah, thanks. I think that is a really good point. We've got a green forestry minister, and she has been incredible. She's put a lot into this. Yeah. So don't always make assumptions about where politicians are coming from. Great. So Dieter, I'm going to come to you next then. So from a country that's really struggling to get penetration of wood into construction to a country which has a lot of timber in building. So what should your colleagues in Ireland learn from your experience? And what concerns do you have about future Commission regulation? But just in a couple of minutes.
Yes, I will be fast.
I say, what concerns you have, that could take forever.
Yes, I know. With millions of course. No, it was quite easier. Yes, we have a lot of timber in construction, and we have also started from scratch. We had a very low percentage in 1995, and now we have speeded up, so to say, the use of timber in construction, either is it single or double family housing or high-rise buildings or even industrial solutions. And firstly, we had another approach because we firstly tackled the technical issues, because this is where the other materials challenge the timber, that they say timber is not reliable, timber is not safe. So we have started with all these technical initiatives. That means fire, acoustic behaviors, thermal properties, etc., etc. And we gave ourselves a mission statement in which we said we want to open up the construction market by, and please listen, delivering sustainable solutions for mass market development or architectural and engineered solutions. So that means housing and other solutions. But we had this word sustainable in our wording. So we solved these technical issues and the construction legislations was opened. But now we have the discussion about sustainability. And this is a quite more critical discussion because it is an open field. We receive new additional requirements with regard to substitution effect, CO2 storage, etc., etc. All these issues are popping up on a Commission level as well as on member state level. And I think in this respect, we have to learn also how to position ourselves. But the only thing, and as I said before, that is always in the room is, do we have enough wood? And I think we have to really to sharpen the communication in this respect, also on Commission and other level, that we really support the use of wood by having a clear communication that we do have enough wood, because otherwise it is counterproductive. We can stop immediately and say, okay, forget about it, we don't have the wood. And the second issue that always comes along is this certification and administration needs that are now popping up on several issues. If I go to a meeting to my members and I have to tell them EUDR, RED 2, PCR, EU, then we have PEF and EPD and whatever, and recycling quota that will come up with possibly with the construction products regulation. They will say, okay, I have to produce a product, and I'm not, so to say, a service company that has as a side product to produce a construction product. No, I have to live from my construction products, and if I have to fulfill all these documentation needs, involvement of third party, fourth party, fifth party, and sixth party involvement that have to testify that the third party is correct, then we have a problem, because then we increase the price of our products and we are not competitive. And the third bullet point, and this is also another issue that I wanted to bring in, as you have said, what concerns do we have? We have to align the regulation with the market development. It's very nice, and we have talked about it also, that we have to integrate reused and recycled products. Nobody's against it. We're also doing studies to analyze what kind of products will come back if we tear down whole Brussels. What kind of quality do we have? What kind of products can we use where? And what does it mean to the percentage of the reuse quota? But the regulation is much faster than the state of the art. And I think this is also a plea to Commission, and this is also what Mr. Wallenberg said. We are ready, and we have to cooperate and discuss more with the Commission. It is impossible that we fulfill regulations that are enforced, for instance, taxonomy that says we have to use 20% of recycled products if we don't have even the backflow of 20% of recycled products. So we have to be careful in what we are doing, and we have to align the legislation with the market needs. And this is also a plea to us. And I have also a proposal for our friend in Ireland. I know that you are now developing the market. We have developed the market. There's an easy solution. Please use our products.
Oh, controversial. Great. Thank you very much, Dieter. And finally, Frans, you get the final say here. And it's a great question. So what should the EU's priorities be to promote wood in the circular economy over the next Commission?
Well, thank you, Joe. You put me in a difficult situation here because I'm a lawyer, so my immediate reflex would be to say forest policy is national competence. So full stop, no. But on a more serious note, it's the. I think what we have also heard today from several colleagues and from people who really work on a day-to-day basis with the forest industry is that they face major challenges. The sector is really under a lot of pressure. We have also heard that there is a lot of potential in the sector, which we will actually need in order to achieve our goals. So the message would be, I think, don't rock the boat. Just enable the sector to fully develop its potential and its capacities in order to help to improve. Also, I think one message would be that we should really be careful in every legislation not to endanger the sector and not to endanger the key role that wood and forest has in all of our lives, also in our history and in our population. I'm coming from a federal country, so we have a very important focus on the regions, as all of you do, but for us it's even a constitutional issue. So we really need to see, if you look at the forest industry and where they work, where people work with it, it's regional jobs, it's local jobs, it's jobs which are also, especially in the Austrian case, very much linked to caretaking of the landscape as well. So all of that, we have talked about the bark beetles, you have mentioned them. Of course, that's also a very serious issue. So everywhere there are different challenges rising up, which we need to face together. And if we do not, actually prevent from endangering this sector, the wood which we will need will have to be imported at one point. I think that's something that's an elephant in the room. So we really need to. We have a lot of forests. We are willing to continue to work with those forests and to cultivate them as we've been doing for centuries everywhere in Europe where there is forest. So make best use of it and ensure that this is also future proofed and it's used in the future as well. Having said that, what is extremely important in general is that we have an active, sustainable forest management, and we have a best practice there as well. I'm not doing the same advertisement disclaimer as Dieter just did, but for example, together with Finland, we've actually worked on Wood Pop, which is a catchy name, I think. It's a platform which you all can participate in. It's a stakeholder platform which has proven a success so far already. There are more than, from 27 states, there are more than 100 government representatives and also stakeholders which participate. Everyone is invited to join that, where best practices are exchanged, where also know-how is being exchanged. And we are in the European Year of Skills. So that's extremely important as a plea as well, to make sure that we will have the skills for the next generations as well in the forestry sector.
Great, thank you very much. So I'd just like to thank panel 2 now for all of their input. And we have overrun a little bit, but the hosts have given me permission to do this. So I am going to run on a little bit because I think it's important that we give an opportunity for you to ask your questions of the panelists that we have left. So if anybody has got any questions, I'd just like to open the floor. Yes, Maiva. She was in straight away.
Thank you. I believe I do need to still have a comment. As Frans has clearly said, forestry is member states' prerogative. It's member states' policy, but so is pretty much construction. So at EU level, we have certain let's say, mandates and rights to work, but a lot of it actually is member states. So you may want to look at your right side when we talk about, let's say, the construction code or building code in Vienna. But nevertheless, there are opportunities at European level as well. And what this session here demonstrates is that many things that shape the landscape are not necessarily per se exactly forestry policy or per se building policy. Things come from climate or they come from energy policy. And therefore, indeed, I'm very much with you about the need to look how things come together. And my comment, actually, to finish my comment, is that, of course, the Green Deal was very much based or is very much based on the mandate that current Commission received from the public. So as we are entering the times of next year's European elections again, we will need to see from the member states what is the mandate that comes to the next European Commission, the Parliament and then the Commission. And this, of course, should be also part of the broader agenda that forest-based industries or bioeconomy at large is keeping in mind for the next months to come. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions from the floor? Yep, at the back here.
Yeah, thank you, Harald Mauser, European Forest Institute. Actually, I have a question to Maive. She mentioned the new opportunities the coalition would have to influence better EU policies. Many years ago, when Commissioner Breton invented the industrial ecosystems idea, we proposed an industrial ecosystem forest-based sector, but it was rejected. And it was told, yes, you should include in textiles or construction. So we are fragmented, and this is not good for the forest-based value chain. So my first question to you is this an invitation to try a new run with a forest-based ecosystem approach? And secondly, how does that relate to this Horizon Europe new research partnerships, where you know that a forest research partnership is under development that would include all actors? So it's also an instrument to bring a whole sector together. How would that rely on that? Should we have two approaches? Will they compete or cannibalize each other? What's the best way to make use of these new opportunities? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to cannibalize also this session. I mentioned these tools, or let's say the wheels, the vehicles that Commission uses, so that industry representatives and member states here can look at them and then find the best that you think would serve your interest best. But that's why I also mentioned the things that already exist. We have a very important joint undertaking, which is an undertaking between at community level enterprise, basically, a joint undertaking on circular bioeconomy. And it also covers forest-based, at least to a certain extent. And there we're seeing, as I said, billions of euros towards the demonstration plans, research, innovation. By all means, it would be good if this continues. We then have this EIT-funded climate communities, or not only climate, but communities, which can also still include further sectors. To my knowledge, there is still money in the years to come, maybe could be considered. But I'm not saying that it has to happen. I'm just saying that this is something that Commission uses as a tool to promote innovation, skills development, startups, and then also, if need be, link it up with the industry alliances. Now, the industry alliances have come up under this Commission as a way of trying to build stronger value chains, particularly in the areas which are new markets, like batteries, hydrogen, and they are always scrutinized by our competition policy colleagues because they cannot be some sort of a monopoly that we are creating, but they are there to help create kind of, off-takers of these new materials, be it bio-based plastics, maybe for car industry and so on. And then from the value chain, from where the raw material comes from until the end, where it is used and recycled. So if this is of interest, one would need to indeed see if there are enough countries, enough industries, and it has to go through this scrutiny by Commission services. It may be accepted, it may be rejected, but I'm saying this is one of the vehicles that has been used. The partnerships that Horizon Europe funds are, of course, essential, and they are, of course, because it comes from Horizon Europe, they are very much zooming in on research priorities, can be used maybe for some of the elements that were mentioned here. How do you calculate? How do you look at impacts? Certainly useful. They also go to a certain extent to innovation, but they are not meant to be really the tool for scaling up industries. So for scaling up of the industries, our current set of tools is not very rich. We have certain elements under the Innovation Fund, under the climate policy, so this could be helpful. And then we have indeed, as I mentioned, a few of the things like working through expert groups or working through alliances and our transition pathway process, which can be also useful. But whether the stakeholders are interested in it, it also depends on, the momentum, how many countries, how many industries, and who, meaning in a meaningful way, would be joining up. Thank you.
Thank you. One more question. Yes.
Very short comment. Andrzej Gundzewicz, Citlit, Poland. What about the threat of deficit when demand increases due to the bioeconomy, biotechnology, and the supply decreases due to restrictions? Thank you.
And who is the question for? Sorry, or I think this is the point that you've been making, Dieter, about.
You said that we have enough wood.
No,
We do have.
we hope that we do have enough wood. We coming from timber construction is a part of the traditional value chain. So we see the traditional value chain, so to say, by scaling up the products, very important. So that means that the cascading use, that it is also mentioned by the Commission, is very important for us, that we always use the product with the highest leverage effect on the value chain. For sure, there are other sectors also popping in and for sure trying to get greener by the use of wood on forest products and side products, etc., etc. We have to be very careful on this, on how to position within our sector. So to say, to keep also this cascading use alive. And for sure, there are potentials for some sectors where we have not enough products at the moment used or low-level products to be used, where we can increase, so to say, also this cascading use. This is for sure true. But at the end of the day, we have to calculate and see how much wood is available for all those that are interested to use wood. And there is a lot of intention to use more wood, but we hope that it will still remain in the construction sector. This is what I've said.
Thank you. I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to wrap up because we've already gone over. So I would just like to thank panel 2, and you are free to go back to the audience now. So thank you very much. And Pierre, I think you're going to close on behalf of the coalition. So thank you very much.
This is not another forum in Brussels. This is something else, trying to put together people actually acting on the ground, in the industry, in the forest, and discussing with policy makers coming from the parliament, members of the parliament, coming from the commission. Thank you very much for being here. And also discussing, negotiating in the council. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for being here. You act in the Coreper for that. And perhaps I will try to point out a few issues we've been discussing this morning. 3 ideas. The first one is that we really need to have an active forest sustainable management in the forest, both, as it was said, in private forest and in state-owned forest or community forest. Because this is a way to prepare the future and face this very difficult issue of having a resilient forest facing the climate change. The second point is that doing so, we are able also to bring to society a major contribution through substitution of fossil-originated material. And this is very important because we have this general target of being one of the major regions in the world to be carbon neutral in the near future. And if we want to get there, we not only have to try to decarbonize the activity, but also to use a kind of originated carbon that is not fossil, and forests and the industry are able to provide that. And the third idea is that to enable to do that in practice, of course, we need a framework. And this is being discussed here at a European level. But it has also to take into account that both forest and industry are local and regional, and they are very specific. And therefore, we need a framework, but we also need freedom to act because we are facing a new situation and we have to react to that. We are facing a market and we have to innovate and take that into account. And we have to be able to have not only a top-down approach, but a bottom-up approach so that we can reach our 2 targets I quoted before. So those are the 3 ideas we've been discussing. And before we quit, I would like to thank you all. And of course, first of all, our 2 keynote speakers, Marcus Wallenberg and Maïve Reuter from the Commission. Thank you very much for your presentations. I would like to thank the speakers for the very interesting contribution. I would like to thank Jo O'Hara for moderating, which is always a very tricky thing to do. I would like to thank the 6 members of the Alliance because they want to work together to find some kind of solution among the industry and the forest production system. And of course, we need to be more than 6, but we've started already with those 6, and thank you for your involvement. Thank you for the team, for the organization, and thank you to all of you for attending.